Okay. While Tia's figuring things out, thank you, Tia. I appreciate you handling it. If we want to go ahead and start with introductions for the people in the room, I just want to go with maybe your name and where you are on your interpreting journey. If you're just starting, if you've been doing it a lot of years, and we'll go from there. I'd like to start in the order that you are on my screen. So Dawn, you're first.
Yeah, my name is Dawn McCullough, and I've been involved with the deaf ministry at our church for a number of years. And so I've also been helping out with interpreting. So that is where I am.
Awesome. Welcome.
Thank you.
Amanda, you're next.
Hi everyone, I'm Amanda. Hey everyone. I've been interpreting for 30 plus years.
Just a second, guys. We have a lot of people joining. So Wanda is next. Wanda Bennett.
Hi, my name is Wanda. I interpret at church, and I've been interpreting at church for maybe about 10 years. So that's where I am, and I just want to try to improve.
Excellent. Welcome. Those of you that just joined, we're taking turns introducing ourselves and just where you are on the interpreting journey. If you've just started, if you've been interpreting for a lot of years, and we're just going in the order that they're appearing on my screen. So after Wanda is William Brandt. Maybe.
I'm Allison Brandt, and I've been interpreting for 48 years.
So happy to have you here.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
Marissa, Tia, Megan.
Okay, sorry guys, I can't get my video to work, but I have been an interpreter for 11 years now, and I prefer the educational system, but I've worked all around.
Welcome. Lisa.
Hey friends, I'm Lisa, and I will let the interpreter do her job. I have been interpreting for an awful long time, and I'm going to get it right eventually. So I'm so glad to be here.
Welcome. Camille.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Camille. Is someone voicing for you? Okay. Hey, my name is Camille. And obviously, I'm not yet a certified interpreter or anything, but my goal is to hopefully eventually work as a deaf interpreter. Right now, I'm in the beginning, infant stages of that, learning more about interpreting. So right now, this is my first deaf interpreting workshop. So I'm a little tired, but I'm here joining. I would like to learn more about what interpreting looks like and learning more about that experience. Happy to learn more about how I can benefit as a consumer and also as a practitioner working in the field and looking at different viewpoints as a deaf person as well and gleaning from that perspective.
Oh, happy you're here. Susie, those of you that are joining us, we're introducing ourselves and how long you've been or where you are in your interpreting journey, beginning, wherever you are. Susie, you're next on my screen.
Okay. Hi, I'm Susie Spainhour. I have interpreted for about 20 some odd years. I do very little interpreting now. I do more mentoring, that kind of thing. I feel like I've restarted my journey. Some of you don't know, but I was very sick in 2020 and still recovering. I am out on disability. However, I do still do a lot of mentoring for especially educational interpreters. That's kind of my niche. And yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
So happy you're here. Autumn.
Hi, I'm Autumn. So I'm pretty new to interpreting. I've been working as a freelance interpreter for about a month and a half. So I'm just now kind of getting started in the field.
Beautiful.
Learning a lot.
Welcome. Lynn. Lynn Deering. I can't hear you if you're talking. You might be trying to figure out something, so we can circle back around. Dura, did I say that right? Dura?
Yeah, I'm April Durham. It's Durham. And sorry. And this is my daughter Dharma and my son David. And this is their 3rd year in ASL. And so they're looking at what to do with ASL because they both feel like that's where they're being led to go. So that's what they're here to find out more about.
Very excited to have you guys here. I don't know if Lynn got her. Gloria.
Hello, my name is Gloria. I am learning ASL and very interested in learning more about the role of the interpreter. And so I thought it would be interesting to join tonight.
Happy to have you.
Thank you.
Tyson.
Yes, hello. My name is Tyson. I've been interpreting for 16 years. I'm a CODA, and yeah, that's it.
Welcome.
you.
Lynn, can you hear me now? Okay. I can't hear you. I think you're on mute still. I can see that you're talking to me, but
Unmute. Can you hear now?
yes, ma'am.
And I think I've got my other things connected here. I know. Okay. My name is Lynn. I've always been interested in sign language. I've taught myself just with books, and I've worked in the School of the Deaf in New York for a little while. And sign language interpreting is like my dream job.
Awesome. Mine too. Happy you're here. Jamie?
I can barely hear you, and I think it's my fault. Hang on. Can you talk now? There we go. I can. That, yeah. Somehow I'm connected to my headphones. I'm sorry. So yeah. So I wanted to find out everything I can about being able to act, follow into that.
Excellent. Happy you're here.
Thank you.
Jamie?
Hello, excuse me. Hello, everyone. I am Jamie. I am wrapping up my 5th year as a teacher of the deaf. I used to work at Georgia School for the Deaf. I did that for 3 years. And education is becoming a thing of a dream, a possible dream past of mine. But I do still want to work with deaf, and I excuse me, I do interpret when I need to at school for my students. So going to the interpreting route seems like the next best thing. If I can't keep teaching, then I'll do the next thing in my passion. So that's where I'm at.
Awesome. Welcome.
Good to see you, Katie.
Likewise. Let's see who's next. Edwin, we're introducing ourselves and where we are in our interpreting journey. Sounds like, it looks like maybe you're still getting connected. So I'll come to Fiona.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everybody. I'm Fiona. I'm in Columbia, South Carolina. I have been interpreting part-time for a long time. And I think I picked a path, but I couldn't resist the chance to see my interpreting friends. So I'm here because I'm always learning. So good to be here.
Welcome. Kathleen.
Hi there, I'm Kathleen. What am I to say?
Just your name and then where you are interpreting journey, just beginning, if you've been interpreter, where you're at.
Okay, well, as of COVID, I'm doing VRI. Prior to that, it was all community interpreting.
Nice. Welcome.
Thanks.
Lauren.
Hi, my name is Lauren Suddeth. I am a rising senior at Gardner-Webb University, so I am just in the beginnings of my ASL journey. I will graduate in December, so I'm just here to learn. Thank you.
Excellent. Welcome. Carrie.
Hello, I'm Carrie Gutzwiller, name sign C by the hair. I've been interpreting for over 20 years in a complete variety of different settings, VRS, VRI, but mostly independent contracting, all community work. I'm located in the north part of the state, so I kind of go in between Charlotte and then the South Carolina, all those regions. I'm originally from Minnesota, graduated from there, certified there, then moved down here and continuing my career.
Awesome. Welcome. Andrea.
Hi, my name's Andy. I am finishing off my first year of educational interpreting this year. And I'm from North Carolina.
Welcome. Lori. Maybe. Lori. We'll circle back around. Faith.
Hi, I'm Faith. Universe. Just beginning my interpreting journey. I go to school in North. Path looks like after graduation, what the next steps are. Excited to learn.
Awesome. Victoria.
Hi, I'm Tori. I'm from North Carolina and I am about 5 years into my interpreting career, but I'm working up in Greensboro.
Nice. Leah.
Sorry about that. It took me just a moment to get my thing unmuted. So my name is Leah Jordan, and I have I've been interpreting for probably 25 plus years.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you for a minute there. I don't know if it was my computer or not. Victoria.
Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you now, Leah.
Sorry, I don't know what happened there. It just froze and then went away. I don't know if you didn't hear the whole thing, but I am 25 plus years. I'm in North Carolina, the East Coast, and I just wanted to join. I'm doing a lot more VRI. I don't travel all over the state like I used to, and I just wanted to see what you had to say. Really, that was my main thing, and that it was also really nice to see other North Carolina interpreters have joined. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Welcome.
Thank you.
Karina.
Hi everyone, my name's Karina. Oh gosh, I've been interpreting for over 20 years. And I don't interpret near as much now as I used to because I'm full-time teaching at Spartanburg Community College. But I do still try to get out there when I can. And I'm just kind of here to hang out with everybody, get some CEUs.
So happy you're here.
Yeah.
Edwin.
Thank you, Katie.
Hi, I'm Edwin Dunlap, and I'm looking at all the names and I'm like, wow, this is like a family reunion. This is so nice. I've been interpreting for a couple weeks, and I retired from the state of South Carolina in 2020, and started right when COVID hit. So that plan for freelancing kind of folded. And so I got picked up by Cardinal Newman School. They started teaching ASL in their private school, and it's grown quite a bit. And they also asked me to teach their AP psychology class. And so I'm keeping me busy over there. And that's it. Just a couple of backyards, chickens and bees, and living the dream. It's good to see folks that I've known, and nice to see new people out here. So welcome. Thank you, Katie, for having us.
I'm so excited everybody's here. Lori. I don't know if Lori can hear me or not. We'll come back again. Barbara. Maybe not Barbara either. Elizabeth.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Elizabeth. I recently graduated from Gardner Webb University, so it's cool to see a couple of familiar faces from there. Yeah, I recently graduated from their ASL program, so I'm just trying to figure out what I'm wanting to do next. I'm thinking maybe educational interpreting, but we'll see.
Awesome. Lula Hammonds.
Hi, my name is Lula, and I'm from Maryland. And I was told about this course by one of my instructors, and I'm taking sign language really because I know a lot of deaf people, and they're my friends. So in order to communicate, I take sign language classes. So I'm enjoying sign language. And it's hard for me when I first started with sign English, and that switched over to ASL because I took a class at Gallaudet, and everything was ASL. And so they told me no English in this class. So when I started signing, they said ASL. I said, okay, fine. And then, but it took me a while to change over, but it's difficult. But now that I've changed over, I really enjoy it because it's really nice. The language is short. You don't have to do so much and take so many things out that you don't have to add in like in English. Thank you.
So happy you're here. Thanks for coming. Okay, the last two that I have are Lori, if you can hear me, and Barbara. Oh, Lori, there you are.
I am a nationally certified and licensed here, working interpreter full-time in all settings.
Beautiful. Barbara. All right, did I miss anybody? Okay, let's go ahead and get in it. How I'm going to run the PowerPoint is I like to bring it up. I'll share my screen go through a couple slides, bring it back down, come back to this screen, and then go over the information. It's easier for me if I don't have to manage back and forth. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry to interrupt. I just want to say for CEU purposes, if everyone will type your first and last name and your SCRID number or your RID number in the chat at the beginning, now that we're starting the content. And then again, at the end, I'll ask you to put in your name and ID number so we have a documentation of who was here for the CEs. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I am Katie MacVittie. I was born and raised in Michigan, where I learned ASL from a book. Some of you who've been in the field probably remember The Joy of Signing. Yes. I would never in my life recommend it to anybody as a way of learning sign language, but it worked in my favor. It fell in my lap, godsend, if you will. So I learned sign language because there was a girl in my Sunday school class who didn't have an interpreter, and she and I became really good friends. I never intended to do it as a profession, but when I moved to South Carolina, I needed a job. So I started working as an interpreter, and I've been doing it ever since. So let's start with screen sharing.
And just as a reminder to everyone to please mute your mics. And
So working in education, pros, if everybody will read through the slides, then we'll go through them.
Hey, Katie.
Yes, ma'am.
Will we get a copy of this slideshow to our email?
You can have it if you'd like it. Yes. If you guys want a copy of it.
That'd be great. Thank you.
So if you're working in education as an interpreter, there's kind of two options. Also, I'm open forum. If you guys have questions, please let me know. Or those of you that have been working in the field, if you have comments to add, please do so. I'm hoping it'll be as comprehensive as possible. In education, there's kind of two options and a slew of stuff in the middle because that's just how everything goes. It depends. One option is that you're working in a school district and there's just one, maybe two deaf students, and you are the only interpreter in the district. So you go through day to day with them. You're going from kindergarten to 12th grade if they're in that school for that long. So you'll go through all the classes with them, tests, you're interpreting everything. Some districts here in South Carolina have deaf ed programs where they have students that are bussed in from other districts so that there are deaf and hard of hearing peers in the school districts. And they have them in the elementary school, the middle school, and the high school. Districts like that usually have multiple interpreters, multiple teams, or multiple interpreting because of all of the students. And that is different dependent on the school system. When I worked full-time for a school system that had a deaf ed program, and we had at the time 7 or 8 full-time interpreters that worked for the school and 35 students. So the interpreters would get divided up, 2 at the elementary, 2 at the middle, 2 at the high school, and we had a floater, somebody who covered all of the extra stuff. When you're working in education, you work for the school system. So your schedule is the school system schedule. You're off during the summers, you're off during Christmas break and spring break, holidays off. You're on a school schedule, 7:30 to 2:30, 8:30 to 3:45, whatever the school schedule is. You have to attend staff meetings. Because you work for the school system, it also means that you're on there, you're paid by the school system, your benefits are the school system, so state benefits. And you work for the school. There are times that interpreters will contract, they'll work for an agency, and we'll get to this a little bit later, but they will come into the school system as a sub interpreter. But we'll talk about that a little bit more when we talk about agency work. Also, there are sub-educational interpreters where if a full-time educational interpreter is out, they will have some people that they contract with that come in and sub for the time that they're gone. And usually sub plans are left, and it's always an interesting case because you're walking blindfolded into a room that you haven't been interpreting for in a long time, or ever maybe. Sorry, I'm just going back to my PowerPoint real quick. The work is stable. You're off during the summertime, which is a nice time to pick up extra work, or travel. If you want to go see family during the holidays, you don't have to take time off because they're closed during the school time is. That's education. Things that I did when I was working in education specific for self-care. And I say this because burnout is a real thing. You get really busy and your body gets tired. And I did naps at lunch. I worked sometimes where I usually was the floater interpreter. So I'd go from school to school. And if I had time on, and I was still clocked out for lunch and I napped for 10 minutes. Sometimes I needed it in the middle of the day. We finally got to a point where we had an office space where we could go and sit down if we didn't have a class to interpret. And that was essential because then we could get away from people. I also did lunch with teachers. Sometimes you need that social connection. Sometimes you don't. So I didn't. And I took mental health days. For the first few years that I worked in education, it was really hard for me to take a day off. And then when I realized that I needed them, sometimes I just took them because I needed a day off. And in that case, I always let them know ahead of time because I also was the interpreter coordinator for several years. And it was really nice if somebody told me just as early as they could when they were going to be off so that I could schedule a sub interpreter for them instead of calling me at 6 a.m., which I know emergencies happen. That's not a problem. Situations that you'll find yourself in education that are not the role of the interpreter. You often get used as an aide or an assistant. And this is a time, the first time you get asked, it's a time to set a boundary. Because if you watch 27 kids 5 times, then you're going to be expected to watch 27 kids every time the teacher needs to go and do something. There's a lot of educating. There's not a lot of people in the public school system, unless they've had experience with an interpreter or a deaf or hard of hearing child that has any kind of knowledge about how to interact with an interpreter or the deaf student. So there's a lot of education going on there. And depending on where you're working in education, sometimes you're all by yourself. If you're in one of those districts that you're the only interpreter, sometimes you're the only one that knows about interpreting and speech and anything deaf culture related, and you're the language model for that student who doesn't have any language most of the time.
Hey, Katie.
Yes, ma'am.
What do we do if it's a situation where the student doesn't, like if we're in a situation where you're not the aide, but you're the interpreter, and then you are just stuck?
Stuck with what?
I feel like sometimes things happen where we're stuck and I leave the room. I stand outside the classroom. If the teacher leaves and doesn't understand the point of an interpreter, I also have a tell her, tell him, or I'm like, why don't you talk to them?
That's what I mean by so much education. I mean that you're the only person sometimes that knows about that stuff. So you have to, at the very beginning, usually educate and say, hey, I'm the interpreter. Here's my role. And set those boundaries so that you don't get stuck.
So it's good at the very beginning to let them know, don't tell him, tell her, look at them.
Yeah, if that's what, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Yeah, I would say you don't have to say tell him or her. You can speak directly to the student. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay. We're going to move on to state agencies real quick. This one doesn't have a lot on the pros and cons because the schedule structure is similar. You can do it. Working for a state agency, Department of Mental Health, vocational rehabilitation, an office that is under the state. They have deaf services department. Department of Mental Health has a deaf services department where they serve deaf and hard of hearing clients, and they have deaf and hard of hearing staff. So if you're working for somewhere like Department of Mental Health or vocational rehabilitation, you'll be doing a myriad of things. Going into patient doctor's offices or eye doctor, medical doctor, going to appointments to interpret for the patients who receive Department of Mental Health services. You will also sometimes be interpreting for staff meetings. They have weekly staff meetings and there's several staff. So you'll be interpreting for staff meetings. If you're on staff for DMH or Voc Rehab, you're pretty much subject to what they need, whatever their clients' needs are. They also contract with outside interpreters if they have multiple clients at multiple locations at one time and they need more interpreters. Same thing, 8 to 5, 9 to 5, whatever the state office is open. They're closed when things are closed. Like if there's a hurricane and all the state offices are closed, you're closed too. Department of Corrections is one of them as well. And I should. And in Department of Corrections, there's a couple different, we have deaf inmates. So for Department of Corrections, you'll interpret medical if they need to go see the nurse, if they're coming out for any kind of meeting with a doctor or a counselor, group sessions of any kind that they're having, chapel, Bible study courses, anything that they do in the Department of Corrections inside prison, you can interpret for as well. And there is a staff interpreter for Department of Corrections who goes, they schedule when they need to see medical, all of those things. And they also bring in contract interpreters. Okay. Interpreting agencies. Interpreting for an agency means you're contracted with them usually, well, two options actually. You're a staff interpreter for a interpreting agency. You work full-time for the agency. They send you your schedule. So you're going, you'll get a schedule on Friday, say, and it'll have your schedule for the entire week. You're going to this doctor's appointment, then next you're going to physical therapy, then you're going to be interpreting at kindergarten circle time. And then the next day you're going to Department of Mental Health, and then you got to stop into a doctor's appointment, and it'll give you your whole schedule for the week. Which is a variety of things, and you see a variety of patients. Some of the good things about that is you see the same clients sometimes, which is really nice, or you're consistently in the same class for if you're doing a college class. There's competitive pay, you get full and part-time options, so that's kind of nice. Sometimes interpreting agencies will offer benefits or supplemental benefits. Not all, but some. And you really get to know the community when you're working for an interpreting agency. You get to know the deaf people, the hard of hearing people. The other option, if you don't work full-time for the agency, is you contract with them. And how that works is they have a job. They text you or email or call you and say, hey, are you available? And you say yes, and you take it or don't take it. I worked a little bit of a third option one time where I worked a permanent part-time job, permanent part-time for a company where they guaranteed me 3 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and they just gave me my schedule. I didn't get any choice or option in that, but I did extra contract work or added work on Mondays and Fridays. So if they wanted me to work Monday and Friday, they would have to ask and I could add or not add. And that was kind of nice because when we were slow, I was guaranteed my minimum number of hours. And if we weren't, then I could work as much or as little as I wanted outside of those 3 days. The good thing about that, sometimes when you're working for an agency, is you get assignment choice. So if you have a lot of educational interpreters that get out during the summer and now all of a sudden we're inundated with interpreters and not so much work, sometimes the agencies will ask their interpreters or their contract interpreters, they'll give them work first before the educational interpreters, just because they've been working for them all year. It's also nice working for an interpreting agency because they kind of cover your butt. I had a really hard job one time that I wasn't expecting to go into, and it turned into a situation that it wasn't supposed to be. And I didn't say anything, but after the job, the owner of the agency found out about it and called me just to check to make sure my mental health was okay, which I thought was really great. So it was nice to have that team, that camaraderie. And if I was interpreting at a job somewhere, it was nice to know who my team was going to be because they were either staff interpreters or interpreters that I worked regularly with. Some of the cons about working as a contract interpreter for an agency is sometimes you don't get a choice of assignments. Sometimes you're stuck with somebody that I just don't like them. I do a good job. I'll be super professional, but sometimes just they require all of my patience, and that's okay. I'm sure somebody feels like that about me. Depending on if you're working contracts or if you're working for the agency or you're contracting for the agency, the time to get paid can be different. In the contract, there's a turnaround time of 30 days or 45 days or 60 days or whatever the contract says. So I would look at that. Being on call. I worked for an agency one time where we were required to have the emergency phone for a month out of the year. Which was fine. At the time in my life, it was great. I was young and it was nice to go to the emergency room at midnight because it just meant I was getting paid extra. Now I'm not so happy about midnight calls. So my interpreting scope has changed a little bit the older I got. But that was nice and not nice, depending on who you are. Being on call was great because it meant you could take the extra hours and get work, or you could delegate it to somebody else. Also not nice because if there was nobody else to delegate it to. Now that's only happened with me with one agency, so it's not always an on-call thing. And sometimes you have people that genuinely just don't care. They just want somebody to work for them. They need to get an interpreter in there. They need a warm body in the seat, and it's okay that you've been going back to back to back all day. So one of the things about being interpreters, you also have to be able to stand up for yourself and say, I can't, or talk to them about scheduling or things like that. You know, there are different types of people in every single setting in life. So some of them take care of you and some of them don't. I haven't had that experience. I have a great experience with everybody that I worked for. That's why I love my job so much. Things that I did specifically as working for an agency is I schedule my regular massages still to this day. I get regular massages. I go see the chiropractor. I carry a book everywhere because the majority of the time I'll drive, not the majority, some of the time I'll drive to an assignment and it gets canceled. But my next assignment is next door and I'm an hour from home. So I'm a reader. I bring a book. I also bring a gym bag, or did. Now I'm mostly VRI, but I brought a gym bag. And if I had it canceled, I'd go to the gym because it was good for my mental health instead of getting ice cream, which was my other alternative. There were clients, like I said, that I didn't go in early for. I just went in on time and did the stuff. Just things that helped me. And I had conversations. If I needed something, I talked to whoever we needed to if I needed to debrief. Okay, I was going through my situations and it looks like I already gave you all of them. So I'll go on to the next one. Okay. Freelance work. Working as a freelance interpreter means that you don't work for an agency, you don't work for a company, you don't work for anybody, you just work for yourself. A lot of people set up LLC, interpreting LLC, or a business of some sort as a form of protection, just so that if anything goes south, that they're personally not liable, the business is liable. Some good things about working as a freelance interpreter is you get to manage your own time and schedule. You get to take whatever jobs you want to take. You usually have a contract with several different entities, hospitals, probably sometimes interpreting agencies. You set your own rate within reason. There's always work, you just have to pick it up. But you do have to manage your own billing, your own taxes. You do really get to know the deaf community because you're out in the community just working and getting to know everybody. And that's, in my opinion, very nice. But it's busy. And one of the bad things is if you don't work, you don't earn money. It's not like it's you work for a company, so, oh, I'm off for the summer and you still pay me. If you work freelance, whatever you work is what you earn. Now, the good thing about that is there are some really high, busy, heavy times and you can do really well. And there are some slow times. But it's a balancing act, in my opinion. As if you're good at budgeting and you want to do it, it's just not for everybody. You will run into places that don't want to pay or don't want to provide an interpreter. So that's a battle that you'll have to fight along the way in interpreting in general. You'll do a lot of advocating for yourself. And that freelance is a lot like working for an agency where you're working at the doctor's office or hospitals or prison or colleges or pretty much anywhere that you can think of. Are we doing on time? Working for a corporation. Sorensen, Purple, Interpretech, a lot of those corporations now have gone virtual since COVID. A lot of those places are now, offer VRI or VRS, video remote interpreting or video relay service. So working for a corporation, say like Sorensen, it's a national company. There's a lot of work, a lot of it's virtual now, like I said, but it's easy. You know, you work your hours, you clock in, you clock out. Depending on which company you work for, depends on what kind of work you do. If you work for Sorensen or Purple, you could be doing video relay service, which is just processing phone calls. That's interesting because you never know what you're going to get. You'll start checking a bank balance and then somebody's calling to check on their car that's at the shop. Somebody's calling 911. The next calls, they're just calling to talk to their mom. You never know what that's going to be. So VRS is very fast paced. It's draining on the body, but it's also a very different day every single day. And if you work for a company, Interpretech, or there's another one that does just medical, there's several that just do medical appointments. So somebody will call in while they're at the doctor's office and you'll interpret for medical appointments. So there's a variety of corporations depending on which type of interpreting you want to do. They offer full or part-time options. It's easy because it's direct deposit and you just clock in, clock out. They offer training and professional development. However, you're in a chair all day most of the time if you're doing remote work. Sorensen, Purple, other companies do offer community work as well. So you can work for them either remote or community. doing the same things that freelance and interpreters that work for agencies do. Some of the things, negative things about working for a corporation is you're just by yourself. You don't have a team interpreter ever. You don't really see the deaf consumer, especially with remote stuff. You're just on a screen all day and in the same position. So body wise, not very good. You don't really get to learn your local deaf community because you're not out and about and meeting them. And it's a corporation, so not everybody cares about your own personal health, physical and mental. So sometimes you're used as a workhorse or a machine if you allow yourself to be. And things that I did to stop that was work hours that were good for me, or not pick. It's easy to pick up extra hours if I can just come into my office and sit in a chair and work, but I also need to balance that mental health. Deaf interpreting. Working with a deaf interpreter, if the assignment's long, it's a 4-person team, 2 hearing interpreters, 2 deaf interpreters. The majority of the time that I have worked with a deaf interpreter, it's just been the deaf interpreter and I, a 2-person team. But the assignments it's been appropriate for those assignments. Working with a deaf interpreter is helpful because it's their native language. Everybody in every hearing interpreter, it's kind of like us going to Russia and learning a language and then becoming interpreters. We may be very, very good at it, but it's never ever going to be our native language. So working with a deaf interpreter often brings first a level of comfortability, sometimes a level of comfortability within the deaf community, because the language is so easy to understand. I've heard a lot of deaf people say that they don't have to work as hard to figure out or interpret what the interpreter is saying when it's a deaf interpreter. It's a very good team. There's a variety of work environments. I've worked with deaf interpreters in the hospital, at conferences, in the legal system, and some of the cons about not working with, but as a deaf interpreter, some of the feedback on here is from deaf interpreters. There's a lot of places that don't want to pay for a deaf interpreter, hearing interpreter team, which is a pain. There's a shortage of DIs. There's not a lot of them, and some confusion about who is. So I know we have here in South Carolina, we have a lot of people that are going for training. So I think I'm hoping that will change. If places do want to pay for a DI-HI team, they want to offer a lower rate to the deaf interpreter, which doesn't make any sense because we're both interpreters. So there have been some struggles within the deaf interpreting community about that. And then also just working as a team. It takes a process. There's not a lot of available trainings for deaf interpreters, and that's a little bit of a frustration. And it does take a little bit longer of a process. Added things that come often in my experience with working with deaf interpreter is also working with deaf-blind clients. In fact, how I learned to work with deaf-blind clients was working through with a DI, with a deaf interpreter. All right.
Hey, Katie.
Yes.
Real fast, what is the difference between a certified deaf interpreter and a licensed deaf interpreter?
Well, a certified deaf interpreter has gone through and done whatever certification RID has required, and a licensed deaf interpreter would be licensed under their state if their state has a interpreting license. I think North Carolina has a interpreting license along with accepting RID credentials.
Okay, so it's like Texas where the BEI, they're licensed deaf interpreters, and then you have the BEI. Because I think the state of Texas, I don't think you can be certified. Is certification a national thing?
For RID, it is. Yeah, RID certification is national. If you have RID or NAD certification, any
So
of the
a
certifications that they offer.
certified deaf interpreter has an RID certification.
A certified deaf interpreter, yeah, they've gone through the RID, the testing that's now under CASLI. Yes. Yes, Autumn.
How would you work with a certified deaf interpreter? Would it be an assignment through an agency or through freelance? You just find that? Like, I haven't run across that. And I'm just wondering what that process is.
A couple options there. Some of the agencies already have deaf interpreters on their contract list. So you can always talk to an agency and they have people that they work with. Also, that you can contract with them if they are also a freelance interpreter that way. If Camille doesn't feel weird, I think she's done some deaf interpreting. If she doesn't feel weird, if she wouldn't mind answering the questions about how she usually gets work, that might help. If she does, I don't want to call her out. Oh, I think I saw her video.
Katie, can someone voice? I can't hear.
Larissa, are you voice or you want me to voice? Make her video bigger.
Voice, just let her know to start again. I just got back. Thanks.
Okay.
I need to pin her. Okay. Go. So your question is like how I find work, correct? As a DI, yes. Really, it's mostly through the hearing interpreters encouraging me. It's been a lot of encouragement, not twisting my arm, encouraging me, and really a lot of connections with those interpreters and learning skills, and also they've recommended my name to different agencies to do some of the work. And I have experience with mental health because I used to work for the Department of Mental Health. And I needed to know who I was working with so it wouldn't be a conflict of interest as well. And if I know who they are, I will turn it down, of course. But different agencies have my name and they decide if they need a DI and it fits my schedule, then I can accept that job. I try to accept different jobs for experience and mostly local. I haven't done anything virtual yet, but I am still learning the process as well. And like court or doctor's offices but I'm really haven't had a lot of experience with that so far, and I'm looking forward to it. I contract with, I think it's contract, but I work with one agency right now, but I can also do freelance as well, just to get the experience. So that's how.
Thanks, Camille. Autumn, did that answer your question?
It did, thank you.
All right, I've got a couple other slides and then we'll go for questions. Professionalism, confidentiality, in my opinion, the most important things. If you can't be trusted, you're not even following interpreter code of professional conduct. It's a great job. It's a great career, in my opinion. There's a lot of variety. There's a lot of niches. There's a lot of different options. Does anybody have any questions?
Katie, can you talk, I guess, a little bit on how you think the impact of some of the recent laws and bills, like the in South Carolina and in North Carolina, will have on the community, and I guess just talk briefly on that, because I know there's a lot of changes coming at us all soon.
There are, obviously, my own personal opinion. I think it's going to, like every big change, I think it's going to rock the interpreting world a little bit. And I think the people that are going to be the most impacted is the deaf community. Because, well, we have a lot of interpreters on a lot of different paths, and I think, yeah, some areas we're not going to be able to do anything about. There are legislations, I'm sorry, some of you probably don't know, there are legislations coming down in North Carolina and South Carolina that are going to require interpreters to be credentialed one way or another to work in certain fields. And that means they need to have some kind of license or certification to work in the field that they're working in. And we have a lot of interpreters now that have been working in the field but don't hold those specific credentials. For example, maybe somebody's been working in the school system and they don't have what's called an EIPA, an Educational Interpreters Performance Assessment, or they've been working in the community and now the new legislation says, oh, you have to have a certain credential, a national certification, for example, to work here. And some of the interpreters that have been working in those settings don't have that. And the process time to get it is up in the air. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a hiccup of change in my own, personally. I think you're going to have some interpreters that will leave the field because they won't take the time or don't think it's worth it to go back and do all that they need to do to get licensed. And so we'll be out just a group of interpreters. I think that, so we'll see some turnover, I think. On the other hand, I think that there are some interpreters that probably have been interpreting for a long time that don't really have any business interpreting. And there are kids that are growing up and adults that are being interpreted for that are not getting any kind of real communication. And so I go back and forth. I'm on both sides on that. I think it will impact the interpreting community in a big way, but I hope it's for the better. I think it's just going to be an adjustment. Do you have a specific question? Because I feel like maybe I didn't answer it all the way.
No, not a specific question. I think it's just something that not enough of interpreters in the area know enough about. And I think the ones that do know are not sure what they can do. People are asking, is there any teeth to this? How they're going to enforce it? When does this all impact us? All of that. And I think there's a lot of people that don't know the information. So it's just kind of just the general information or where to go for the people that do want to know more, I think is important.
I agree with that. I know that SPRID South Carolina RID is coming out with a refresher. I don't really know what else to call it. An update is probably a better word for it. An update on the outcoming legislation that's supposed to start in January of 2024 for us here. So if there's specific things, I agree that there are a lot of people that are unsure about what's going to happen, what it's going to look like, what does it actually mean? Yes.
Hey, Katie.
Yes.
What would you recommend for people that do not have a bachelor's degree but are ready to be nationally certified? Because I can take the test, but I've been an interpreter for 11 years. I can pass the test, but I don't have a bachelor's degree.
CASLI won't let you test without a bachelor's degree for your national. For your NIC, one of the requirements under RID, under CASLI is a 4-year degree. They changed it in 2009.
And is GRID planning on doing a BEI acceptance? So because BEI doesn't require a bachelor's degree,
It's up for discussion as far as I know. It has to be agreed upon with SCAD as well. In my opinion, I think we should take whatever is best for the interpreting community. I would like all of us to be all inclusive. So
hi, this is Lori. I want to have input on the bachelor's degree. If you look under RID National, there's a bachelor's equivalency. A lot of people with their work hours, associate's degree, other things, they will qualify for that. You send all your packet in with, I'm sure, a fee, and they'll process that for you. And on your national membership, it will list you as bachelor's equivalent.
Thank you, Lori.
That's actually great to know. I haven't tested for my national in quite some time, and the system has changed since I did. So that's really good to know. Thanks, Lori.
Just
Any
a quick
other
comment.
questions?
I think it was called the alternative pathway. I don't know if they've changed that title, but the alternative pathway if you don't have a bachelor's degree.
I know that there's 3 sections for the that test, like the written, the performance, and then I think like an ethics one or something else. And you can take the first 2 without having a bachelor's, but you can't take the last one that makes you get fully certified. But if you take the first 2 and like have proof of that, is that sufficient to work, or you have to have the certification with the new laws?
Okay.
That was a question.
Oh, you're asking.
Yeah, I'm asking, is it sufficient? Like if you pass those first 2, but you don't have a bachelor's or you can't take that last one, but you have proof that you've passed 2 of the.
I think they break it up when they're doing it. And if somebody knows a better answer, please say so. Sarah, do you kind of look like you do? Okay.
I can help you. So in South Carolina, in January 1st of 2024, anybody that is licensed under DHEC, meaning hospital systems, I believe colleges and government entities for sure, like DSS, DMV, the Department of Mental Health, I think, and Social Security and all of that. Any entity that is licensed under DHEC after January 1st of next year will have to be nationally certified, fully nationally certified, in order to take those assignments. But anywhere else in South Carolina with any other jobs, it's status quo. There's no credentials required. So for North Carolina, that's different. They have a provisional licensure. You can look on their website to see more details about that. And I believe that has something to do with passing the written. So anyway, but I won't speak to North Carolina. But that's what I know to be true about January 1st moving on.
Anything else?
So this new bill law does not impact educational interpreters, only community, because I've heard back and forth about it, and so I was not sure.
The new law starting January 24 is for community interpreters. Department of Ed is not included on that particular interpreter bill. Okay. If there's not anything else, I think there's an evaluation that needs to be filled out that is going to be placed in the chat box. Thank you, Tia. Man, you're on top of it. Please fill out the evaluation. Please give honest feedback. I want all of the feedback. Thank you for coming. I really, really appreciate your time. Thank you for the interpreters, Larissa, Marissa, Tia. Thanks for running everything behind the background. Mostly thanks for giving up your Thursday to be here. I really appreciate you guys. I think you need to go. I was gonna say, I think Tia needs your numbers again. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I apologize for the difficulty getting in. I didn't understand how the Zoom settings work, so I'm still learning a lot as I go. I don't think you need to put your RID number in again. If you'll just put your name at to show that you were here until the end, that should be sufficient.
Hey, Katie.
Yes, ma'am.
Katie, this is Susie. I was wondering, can we go ahead and talk about our next one as well?
Yes.
I was about to say, yeah, stay tuned. But we'll be sending out an email shortly about our next mini workshop, which will be about the EIPA. That's the interpreting test for educational interpreters that Katie mentioned. And Susie Spainhour, if you want to talk a little bit about what that workshop is going to be focusing on.
Sure. So next month you'll be learning about the EIPA, both the written and the performance test with me. It's going to do some brief talking. We can't do a whole lot in an hour and a half, but I will show you the new website that Boys Town has created and where to register. We'll talk about some of the places where you can take the test, how much it costs, what kind of questions they ask, just some little topical information about both the performance and the written test. Okay.
All right, and that will be on June 15th. That's also a Thursday at the same time. So I'll put that in the chat. Also, if you'll save the date we have a workshop coming up that will be more about deaf interpreters and CDIs. That will be August 26th, which is a Saturday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And that will be at Spartanburg Community College. And then finally, like Katie mentioned, we're going to schedule an update about the Interpreter Act and what that means. We're looking to get that scheduled in about a month. So stay tuned for those emails.
Susie, oh, sorry, Kate.
Go ahead.
Susie, can you stay on for a minute after this phone call? After this video, I'd like to talk to you for a second, if that's okay with you.
Okay.
Sorry, Kate, go ahead.
If there's nothing else, thank you guys. I appreciate it. Have a good night.
For the recording be posted. You said you were going to share your slides.
I can. Yep.
Okay. Can we also post the recording?
I don't see why not.
Okay. All right. Thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you, Tia.